begin with our second panel discussion. The topic for this panel discussion is 21st Century Learning, Focused Leadership Practices. For this session, our panelists are Ms. Ashish Garg, Mr. Vishnu Karthik, and Ms. Sunanda Sandhir. The moderator for this session will be Ms. Deepti Sawhney. Can I have the panelists and the moderator on the stage, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Deepti Sawhney, and you can't imagine the pleasure and the thrill I feel, hearing the questions that I did in the morning. Actually, I've been debating and deliberating educational technology for the last 10 years and doing teacher training also for the same silo, if you want to call it. I call it a silo because it's not being integrated as we want it to be. Whenever I had this idea of integrating technology and I would voice my idea, so people would say, wonderful thought, but give it 5 years. But in the morning, what I heard from all of you, I think we all have arrived, and that's really, really encouraging. So just to give you a little background, we all live in an increasingly diverse, globalized, complex, and media-saturated society. Emerging technologies and resulting globalization provide unlimited opportunities. Would you all agree on that? So how do our schools need to be? And the panelists that we have here today are all into leadership. So we would be talking to them about what should leadership look like in a 21st century scenario. So we all heard in the morning that there were these little doubts in people's minds when they said, how do we integrate? What are the things we buy? It's so expensive. How do we have it for everybody in the classroom? So I think those are the things which are on one side, but we really have to get up, go ahead, and do our thing. So my first question, of course, would be for Sunanda. What do you think should be the technology agenda in a school?
I was just talking to Vishnu that, for me, it's not technology agenda. It is the education agenda and what is the role of technology in it. Because technology has a role, but it is basically education agenda.
Right.
So if I look at it, for me, when I look at the role of technology in my school, I definitely look at teacher training as a part of it. And collaborative learning, we look at providing the right systems which, and the right resources which enable and motivate the students are here. They will learn. I mean, they're already there. They are way ahead of us, whereas technology is concerned. But understanding their world, we have to provide them the right resources, and we have to enable our systems that understand and bring that change in mindset, which would be my agenda for the school if I want technology to play a major role.
That's great. We would like the audience to participate in this little debate as well. So if anybody has a point on the, like we were talking about, what should technology look like in your school? So if you have like something to say about, now would be a good time. Anybody who wants to say something about what should technology look like Sunanda said, to have professional development that is sorted, have it led by the teachers, or do you want it to be child-centric, to be student-centric? What kind of a scenario are we looking at? Yes, please.
I think the point the way you made is very valid. I'm very glad that somebody said it, because what's been disturbing me this morning has been the implicit sort of assumption that as long as there is Google Devta, then we don't need to learn anything.
Right.
I think this is exactly the way we need to be looking at technology. Technology is an enabler. It is a facilitator, but it doesn't either replace the teacher or the process of learning. So I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But when we look at the processes of learning in a classroom scenario, we do want to have that kind of an empowered teacher who says, yes, this is the time I need to use technology. So like Sunanda said, the professional development for that kind of a scenario is very important. Okay, so if we look at, this is for Karthik, this question is for Karthik. So if we are looking at these kind of skills, you want to call it, or you want to call it attitudes, mindsets, how do we embed it in the school culture? How do we say, okay, this is what our school culture should look like?
Okay, thanks, Deepti. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. So, Deepti, one thing I want to clarify at the outset. In India, any truth about education is true, because this is a land of contradictions. So what could work in one part of the country to a particular type of school, to a particular population, socioeconomic background, may not be true for another set of students. So I just want to clarify that. So what I'm speaking right now is for an urban private school, largely catering to upper middle class parents. So I don't have much insights or hands-on experience of, let's say, government schools or affordable private budget schools. So if you ask for an urban private school, or even in a school in a town, for example, what would you do? Your question is around how do you build a culture? Right?
Yes.
For me, the issue is not about technology. The issue is about mindsets. And the mindset should begin with teachers in the first place. And as I was thinking about these questions which you had circulated earlier, I think schools should first start seeing themselves not as content providers, but skill builders. That's the first step. And I think teachers and the management should see that we are not just providing content, but we are building critical skills and capacities. It may look, cliched, but the fundamental need should happen at the very subconscious level for every teacher. If that change doesn't happen, you may bring in iPads, you may bring in laptops, but you may replace the laptop with a blackboard, but still the chalk and talk is going to continue. So that's important. Number two, second mindset is that teachers should start realizing that content is everywhere. It is not in the teacher, it is not with textbooks, it is not, content is everywhere, and it's highly democratized. So students can access it anywhere. So teacher's role is not to transmit content, but being a mere facilitator. I think that's the second mindset which needs to build clearly. And how do you build this? There's certain things which we did as a school in the last 10, 12 years. The first thing is we showed our teachers the power of possibilities. Like, I can understand some of the reservations we've had, some of the doubts, skepticism which comes out of this audience. And this happens every day. Even in the best schools in the world, you'll have teachers raising these questions, right? But the way to solve these is to show the teachers the power of possibilities. One thing is take on study missions, for example, right? Expose to them how these models work, for example. Two, invest in good learning, experiential learning expeditions for teachers, which means before you start designing projects for students, start designing projects for teachers. Let teachers experience what it is to actually learn by doing, what it is to learn through using technology, right? Once they experience, they'll figure out how this needs to be done. Third, which is extremely critical, I think one of the speakers shared that there is a curriculum, there is a state curriculum, whatever board you belong to. How do we do this? Because we have X number of hours and X number of subjects to cover. For me, the first step for a good, meaningful education is to empower teachers to drop content, right? I don't know, it's highly debatable, but I have visited several schools around the world. In our own experience too, we realize no good work can happen if you have to cover all the content. You need to be extremely choosy, deliberate, and conscious to learn, to decide what should be my children's enduring understanding, which means in grade 8 or grade 9, any grade, we should be clear, these are the X things which my child should have deeper understanding, and these are the concepts my child may have a superficial understanding, and these are the concepts the child can drop. That needs to happen. If you don't have this, you will never be able to create the space for teachers to go deeper into any content. And fourth, which is extremely important, we need to provide structures for planning and assessments, which is group planning and assessments. Many a times, teachers plan, but in many schools, what happens is that plan is just a document which goes to the departmental head of the coordinators for a signature, right? But we need to create structures of 1 hour, 2 hours every week, or probably in a month, or in a quarter, depending on what the school is, where teachers across subjects sit together and plan. So I think these are some of the practices which we could do to build this culture of enabling meaningful education. When I say meaningful education, it's just not restricted to technology, but any pedagogy, including technology, which helps students go deeper.
Great, thank you so much. I think we heard in the morning as well when I think a gentleman said that, we need to get together, we need to co-construct, and that's precisely, the content that comes through to the children, not only being constructed by the teacher, but co-constructed by the teacher and the student. I think only then learning can become meaningful. So I just want to connect that to a scenario. Somebody said in the morning that, we do not have the budget, there are budgetary constraints, how do we get that kind of hardware into the classrooms? There is this person living in the remotest, he's a principal who teaches science and is living in the remotest areas of Rajasthan. And there are few in that pocket, there are 2 or 3 schools who do not have a science teacher. So what he's done is he's deliberated their timetables, and through Skype, he is giving those science lessons to those schools as well. So that's technology, that's democratization of education. How do we get that? So my question is for Ms. Garg. Do you think, since the strand that we're discussing is technology right now, do you think that technology has that kind of power to be able to elevate education to that level?
Thanks, Dipti. I think, it's a given that technology does indeed have the power to make learning more collaborative, enhance communication skills, etc., etc. So I'm not going to kind of delve on that, but I want to pick up the question that the gentleman in the morning kind of picked up, and which is the, links up to the strand that you're talking about now, is about cost effectiveness of technology. And I think just like your science teacher did, he thought about the problem, he deliberated with the other schools, he created a timetable that would be suitable for everybody, and then he created this two-way interaction between the other schools, which did not have a science teacher, and his own classes. So that's a very good example. So technology can definitely do that. That's point number one. But I think what we are looking at in the very near future is the great fall of the amount of money it is going to take to put technologies. And I'm not talking about fancy technologies every week. I'm talking about technologies that can actually help our children in the government schools to learn, children in the private schools to learn, everywhere. You will see a dramatic price reduction. So as the economies of scale build up, there is going to be a dramatic price reduction. If only we started not thinking as individual schools in silos, but thinking about a much larger cluster of schools. And you can pool in all the resources. It can be technology resources, it can be content resources, it can be professional development resources, collaboration of math teachers, collaboration of science teachers, not just within that village of Rajasthan, but with villages in Argentina, villages across the world. The world is the limit. N number of several branches can come out of that. The problem is that we are always thinking about हमारे स्कूल में, हमारे स्कूल तक broadband आना चाहिए. I remember when we were working in Chandrababu Naidu's constituency in Kuppam, and there were about 7 schools over there, government schools. And each one of them wanted to have a separate landline so that they could do the dial-up and all of that. And obviously because it was misused and the bills were inflated and all of that stuff, within the next 3 to 4 months, this whole project died out. But today, I think what is really very important is that you have to stop and start thinking about how do we utilize this huge platform, this huge possibility that has been given to us. And at the end of the day, like Sunanda says, like Vishnu mentioned, we really have to keep the focus on education. Today, what we are doing is we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So we're not thinking, the awe of technology is so much. Technology actually will become very invisible. Today, in the morning, Dr. Pant mentioned that you use a mobile phone, but the government did not invest in training, millions and millions of subscribers of mobile phone on how to do WhatsApp, how to do other stuff. And you did not do that. You use WhatsApp for everything. A couple of days back, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, you know what? there is a WhatsApp for divorce, for getting divorced, but I'm so sorry because I've already had my first divorce. Second one के लिए मैं बिल्कुल WhatsApp use करूँगा. So you kind of have all these things. You don't have to actually go sit there and learn. If the focus is right, if you're focusing on the process of education, as Amit Kaushik mentioned, if you're focusing on education, all these are the peripherals, the bilaterals, and we have to make technology as invisible as possible so that the focus remains on the teacher and on the teaching. So I think that's very important, and honestly, I think technology already exists in some form or the other. You don't need to spend an enormous amount of money in putting in extraordinary amount of technologies, because no matter what you do, within the next month or so, it will become obsolete. There is a time where you have to say, enough. With this, I can actually fulfill my obligations of. So the point really is, it needs India to sit down and talk about a vision for education. Dubai is a small place. It has a vision for its education process. It has a strategy for implementing education. Abu Dhabi has it. Every country in the world has it. India has 1.6 million schools, and I'm not counting the private schools. We do not have a vision for education. हमें ये नहीं मालूम है what do we want our children to be when they, by going through this education process. And every time we think, you just have to go get into IIT and you will live happily ever after. But things are changing. This whole scenario is becoming totally blurred. It's dangerous to ask a 5-year-old kid, आप बड़े होके क्या बनोगे बेटा? Because 10 out of 10 times, उसको जो बनना है, that has not been invented as yet. So you have to teach him how to learn rather than to teach him a particular subject. And उसके लिए एक certain amount of technology is fine. You can do that, and then you can leave him to carry on with whatever else stream or strand that he wants to take up. So I think that really should be the vision. I mean, as a country, as a district, as a city, we all really need to sit down with the people who manage this and try and put an educator's viewpoint into the planning. That is really very important.
Great, thank you. So we have deliberated on what the curriculum should look like, what should our schools look like, and like Ashish said just now, what should our vision be? So I'm sure all of you here, I mean, most of you are directors and principals. Do you think that the technology is driving the leadership, or the leadership has changed because there is so much technology around? So Sunanda, what are your views on that?
I don't know whether it has really changed, but it does need to change. Because leaders, the technology has enabled us to become learners. And leadership is no longer authoritative or hierarchy. We have to collaborate much more. So it's not about teaching our children to be learners, but it's also about teaching ourselves to be learners. So leadership definitely, for me, I feel definitely as a leader, I'm in second, and I'm always learning. As I always say, I'm learning from my students, I'm learning from my teachers, and I'm learning from my director. So leadership definitely needs to start looking at, if they want to use technology as a tool that can enable and create independent learners. It's not that we have to create children as independent learners. We also have to create an environment where teachers become independent learners also. And that itself is a very important part. That's what I feel that leadership needs to change.
Thank you. Anybody here in the audience who wants to share about how the leadership changed or evolved in your own scenario? That would be, I mean, a great thing to hear about. Any case study that you want to talk about? Yes, please. Because these are learnings. We all learn from each other.
My name is Wing Commander. Is it working? I want to share one very important part in the leadership. That is, leaders are not born, but we make leaders. Technology is one of the tools to get the perfection in doing the jobs and also to be a professional in deciding. Decisions could go wrong, but out of 10, if 9 decisions are correct, the leadership is effective. Thank you.
So be bold, be courageous, and just do your thing. And I think in this case scenario, we need to take all the stakeholders along with us, the parents, the teachers, the students, and I think that makes it worthwhile. So looking at this and having this discussion so far, Ashish, if you could, I mean, with your crystal ball, if you could tell us, what is learning going to look like in, say, 10 years' time? Let's say 5 years' time.
Like I said, 10 years is a concept that does not exist anymore. I mean, somebody in the morning said, what's your plan for Kriya for the next 20 years? I think that question is irrelevant. If I was in a boardroom trying for a job and they asked me 20 years, I would really not know what to say, and I would think that इनको भी नहीं मालूम है because 20 साल में तो आप रहोगे कि नहीं रहोगे मालूम नहीं. Yeah, so I think within the next 3 to 5 year time frame, which is what I do, I mean, I study the global trends around the world, and many of them are emerging at this moment, and I try to apply them on education, especially within the India context, and see what are the trends that we will be seeing in the next 3 to 5 year time frame. So that's the 3 to 5 year time frame that I'm going to talk about. I think technology is already ubiquitous. I've said that several times since the morning. And the one thing that's going to happen, and it's already actually happening very rapidly, is the blurring of the hardware and the software. And that's where I make that point about, it'll become cost effective because per unit price reductions will follow very, very rapidly. So I think all of your technology tools actually are now available on the web. Your lessons are now available on the web, and much of it is free. But you're paying for it with your attention. So currently you are using it free, but beyond a certain point of time, because you become so used to it, you will become so dependent on that piece of technology, you'll have to start paying for it. That's where the market forces have to be left open so that there is healthy competition and that the consumer benefits irrespective of what technology platform he decides to use. So I think that is one very important element that we are going to be looking at. So all of you who are planning to set up your computer labs or enhance your technology platforms, you should take a look at that. I've written about this in a couple of magazines. The one that I can remember right away is Education World. And I've talked about, what are the technology tools that you should be looking at in the next couple of years so that, you can reduce your costs and increase your outcomes on that. 2, I think the other really important thing that's coming up is the resurgence of art, or arts as we call it. I think the whole, dogmatic persuasion of STEM learning, science, technology, engineering, and math, I think that's kind of becoming a little passé now. I'm not saying that it will become obsolete, it never will, but I think most educators around the world are now focused on STEAM learning, that is science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So arts is a very important thing. And in the India context, I think it's absolutely critical. Any one of you who wants to run a small independent consulting or a small independent office will realize how difficult it is, because you cannot get enough youngsters to write a straight sentence in good English. How many of you in the schools face this problem? Yeah. So our communication skills are actually at an all-time low. And the more you use technology, the more technology platforms become, across the generations, you're using technology, grandmother uses technology, everybody uses technology. For our children to be really effective in the new world that they are going to inhabit, I think communication skills are absolutely critical. They need to be able to communicate complex ideas in full-blown white papers as well as 140-character tweets. Some of the crap that you see on Twitter is enough to put you off because there's just no relevance. So I think that is one of the things that you have to look at, communication skills. And finally, I think this whole concept of converting information into intelligence, that is going to be a very, very important element of growth and preparedness for the future. And about 3 billion people will join the middle class in the coming 5 years. Today, only about 10% of the world's total information is online. And even then, you feel that you are swamped with information. There is a tsunami of information. And you need to know kya padhe, kya na padhe. Rainforest pe agar aap Google karte ho, to you'll find like about 1 million sites over there. So the idea is not really about what to teach, but how to find out what to study, what to learn. That is, again, you know, becoming a very important thing. So I think this whole conversion, the differentiation between information and intelligence, knowledge and wisdom, that become very critical. And finally, I think the ethics of using cyberspace is going to occupy a lot of our minds and is also going to create a lot of new businesses, because you will find this coming up very much. And as usual, the government of India is completely closed its eyes and ears on that, as it does on most things. So I'm not surprised. But I think from the ground up, for educators to kind of really think about that, because you are handling anything between 1,000 to 3,000 kids in your school. This is going to become one absolutely fundamental issue, because you cannot do away with technology and you cannot allow abuse of technology. So you'll have to figure that out. So I think primarily these are the 5 things that I see happening within the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you. I've just been told that I have time for just one question. So when we are looking at this scenario, what Ashish just spoke about, and then you talk about the government, the boards and the policies and the policy makers who have this kind of a disconnect with what is happening in the classroom. So any one of you, if you would like to throw light on that, what do you think would be the utopian sort of a scenario for that? You know, the boards per se, or say NCERT, like Professor Pant was speaking in the morning, that, you know, there is this disconnect. So what would be the ideal way to put these policies and what's happening in the classroom together?
In fact, I just put it on my Twitter space today about this point. And by the way, my experience is also from grade 8 to grade 12. You know, I've seen around the world, including Finland, Singapore, US, for example, where a lot of good work is happening in spite of the negative perception we have about American schools. There is a lot of progress in terms of meaningful pedagogy in the junior school. I think we pretty much have figured out up till about grade 4, 5, 6. The challenge comes from grade 6 onwards, when there is a pressure to teach to the exams and for a particular job or university, right? And that's when the boards have a larger say in it. And we are a traditional CBSE school, but we are still an experiential learning, project-based learning school, right? When we started, we didn't have textbooks, and our parents were upset. How can you not have textbooks? We said, no, we'll create our own curriculum, because NCERT is not, it's for an average Indian school, not for a good Indian school. A lot of parents walked out, a lot of teachers walked out, but we still stuck on. We went through the process of creating our own curriculum, which is more meaningful, which is more integrated, right? Today I can tell you, this year, board 12 results, we've topped the nation in terms of school average, right? Now parents are extremely excited. So one key lesson for any change is get your grade 12 results right. That gives you license to do anything, right?
So it's
So I can tell you this, my first mandate when I took over was to be in the top 5 nationally. And you know, for a school like ours, which doesn't even have test till grade 8, we do not rank, we do nothing even before the government mandated it. It was anathema to study for results. But we took on this promise. We said, you can do meaningful work till grade 11. Grade 12, you start working on examination skill. 9 months is all it takes to top the exams. And we have a school average of 91.1%, which is the highest in the nation, right? Now, that includes humanities, because the next 4 schools, which is in the top 5, are schools in Chennai, which does not offer humanities, which is a shame in a country like India, which is so rich in arts and culture. And forget arts and culture, even to have a good technology job, you need to have liberal arts background, and schools don't offer. Right? So to your question, what we can do with NCERT, stop blaming NCERT and CBSE. They are some of the most wonderful and liberal programs, not because they are utopian, but because they have a lot of loopholes. Right? So take advantage, take advantage. Nobody is going to ask you, why have you not covered? Why have you not done this? They just ask you to do some broad framework of CCE. There is enough loopholes. If your teacher community is excited to do meaningful work, you can figure out, come on. Every private school in this country beats loopholes when it comes to running schools. Right? We've taken entrepreneurial license to operate in this country. If you put 10% of that energy in pedagogy, you can do wonders.
Thank you. Okay, I think we need to close now. That's the time out. I'm just going to leave you with a thought. So when you look at the future and you look at the learner in the classroom, do you want that learner to go out there in the future and fit into that future, or do you want that learner to go out and create that future? Right? Create it, yes. So I would like to thank the panelists here for their time and the insights that they've given us. Thank you so much. And a round of applause for them, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, panelists, for this session. I would request Ms. Soni to present our panelists with a token of appreciation from the EdTech team.